Welcome back to Augment, the Warframe series that puts some of the less useful augments in Warframe under the spotlight, highlighting their issues and offering suggestions to make them more useful. Today, we take a look at Piercing Navigator, a mod for Ivara's Navigator that increases the crit chance of the projectile by 10% for each target hit, for up to 50%. Since this bonus is this word that I can't pronounce, it means that this bonus is only good for weapons that already have good crits anyway. This also means that you have to hit 5 enemies to get a bonus that is less than half of Point Strike. First, let us talk about the positives. As little as the crit chance is, it does still increase it a little, and can allow some weapons to perform a little better. Sadly, that is all that is positive about this, so let's discuss the reasons why this mod is on this series in the first place. For one, Navigator is really only useful for fun and for solo play. Most mission types have enemies in very small rooms, and the fact that your map does not carry over to the projectile means that, though often you can go through doors with a punch-through projectile, you won't have any idea where you're going to begin with. It can be useful with the Zenistar built with Blast and Corrosive versus Grineer, as since it counts as a melee weapon, it can gain stealth attack bonuses when killing enemies, but the crit chance boost is still almost non-existent. Its energy cost also becomes obnoxious after a short time, which honestly makes little sense to me since the damage boost from Navigator isn't super high unless you mod for strength, but then you have lower efficiency anyways. All in all, the mod suffers in the majority of missions due to how Navigator works in the first place. The bigger issue, and why people actually overwhelmingly agree that this mod is not useful, is the fact that Digital Extremes chose to ignore the players who voted on the Design Council. As you can see here, Piercing Navigator isn't even on this list at all. While the top choice makes sense to not be implemented due to issues with punch-through, letting the player bypass a ton of stuff and get stuck a lot, all the other following suggestions seems reasonable, even up to having a toxic spread where the projectiles go, despite that probably being low damage anyways. While generally I find that players vote for the dumbest augments and they get through only for them to be just as useless as I imagined, for this augment DE didn't even listen to their own poll for whatever reason. Now you're probably asking yourself, if this mod is so bad, it wasn't even voted on, and Navigator is a niche ability to begin with, how do they fix it? Simple actually. It's called Piercing Navigator, so I came up with an idea to go with that name, which involves giving the projectile you fire unlimited punch-through. But that is only the first part of the change. The second lets you see enemies through walls, similar to the Zenith Disc ability, but enemies will pulse rather than constantly glow, to lower the strain on the game's engine for rendering enemies outside of rooms that are not rendered at the current time. This will allow you to take control of the projectile you fire, then actually see enemies in other rooms, which is the biggest issue with Navigator on its own, like I mentioned, since the map does not link to the projectile, and thus does not show where you currently are in relation to the map. This has been Augment. Stay tuned for the next episode where we will take a look at yet another Augment mod.